All right. Good morning, everyone. It is now 9 o'clock. I would like to call to order the Barrier Islands Government Council meeting for Wednesday, January 29th. Please stand for the pledge. All right, we'll start off with the roll call. I will start myself. My name is David Will. I am the mayor of Reddington Beach, and we will move to our left.
Lisa Hendrickson, Mayor for Reddington Shores.
Anne Marie Brooks, Mayor, Madeira Beach.
John Backer, Mayor of Treasure Island. Adrian Petrillo, Mayor of St. Pete Beach.
And we'll go around the room, please. Starting here.
I'm Marcia Green, and I'm from Caribbean.
Oh, thank you, Robin. Good morning, everybody. Barry Rubin, President and CEO of the Pinellas Beaches Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning, I'm Heather Davidson, Vice President of Membership for Pinellas Beaches Chamber.
Good morning, this thing is awesome. I want one at home. I am Director of Operations for the Pinellas Beaches Chamber of Commerce. To you, I want to toss it.
Good morning, Joan Goodrich, City of Treasure Island Economic Development.
Oh.
You can throw it.
Oh, we can throw it? Jan Wilson, Vice Mayor, Indian Rocks Beach.
R.B. Johnson, citizen of Indian Rocks Beach.
Carla Bowling, Titan Home Lending.
I love this thing. I'm taking it home. Gina Johnson, Waterfront Realty.
Tim Johnson, Waterfront Realty, Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber.
Pat O'Neill, resident Madeira Beach.
Margaret Anchio, resident Madeira Beach.
Here we go. I am Alex Harsha. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce.
Well, RJ Myers Consulting Group.
This is like a game show. Susie Sofer, Commissioner of Bel Air Bluffs.
Hi, I'm Stan Sofer, XXI Management.
Just like
Renee Rose, City Clerk for the City of Bel Air Beach.
Good morning, Larry Shear, resident of Indian Shores.
John Bishop, Pinellas County Coastal Management.
Kelly Hammer-Levy, Pinellas County Public Works. Colleen Cheney, Board of County Commissioners, Office of Chairman Brian Scott.
Good morning, C.J. Hoyt, Commissioner, Town of Reddington Shores.
Good morning, council member from Indian Shores.
Good morning. Tina Porter, Town of Indian Shores, Town Administrator.
Tony Fabrizio, Pinellas County Communications.
Ashley Giovanetti, Pinellas County Communications.
Tom Washburn, Pinellas County Public Works.
John Reman, Pinellas County Public Works. A little disappointed I didn't get the fun box over there.
Gina Harvey, Pinellas County Public Works Transportation.
Cameron Bradbeer, resident Reddington Beach.
Mike McLaughlin, Town Administrator, Reddington Shores.
Adriana Neves, Town Clerk, Town of Reddington Beach.
Jolie Patterson, Deputy Clerk, Town of Reddington Shores.
Megan Powers, Assistant to the City Manager, Madeira Beach.
And Robin Gomez, Madeira Beach City Manager. Thank you all for coming out.
Bill Queen, Mayor, North Reddington Beach.
Diantha Shear, Mayor of Indian Shores.
Denise Hausberg, Mayor of Indian Rocks Beach.
Bruce Rector, Mayor of the City of Clearwater.
Dave Gaddis, Mayor of the City of Bel Air Beach.
Well, all right, that's everybody. Well, Sam just walked in, so come on, Sam.
Sam Jenkins, SPC's Institute for Strategic Policy.
Thank you. All right. So depending on the length of today's meeting, I might have to leave early, but if that happens, then Vice Chair Gaddis will take over from there. So do we have any changes to the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on, can we get an approval of the minutes from our last meeting, December 4th?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. An approval of the treasurer's report for November and December of '24.
Motion to approve.
Did you want to go over the
Is there a
report?
presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah. Presentation.
All right, so for the statement period November 1st through November 30th, our beginning balance was $13.93. We had some disbursements due to our web hosting. Ending balance November 30th was $11.44. In December, our beginning balance again, $11.44, no deposits, no disbursements. Ending balance as of December 31st, $11.44. That concludes the treasurer's report.
Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Treasury report approved. All right, we'll move right into new business. Dr. John Bishop from Pinellas County to talk to us about sand renourishment.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm here to give an update on the easement acquisition process and our Sandkey project. Do I have a way to move this forward myself, or do I need to request it?
What are you looking for?
Like the slides, can I?
So tell me to advance it.
Okay, advance the slide, please. So a quick overview of our federal project areas. We have 3 different federal project areas that historically were nourished by the Army Corps of Engineers: Sandkey, Treasure Island, and Long Key. They're both still active. They haven't expired yet. Treasure Island was recently actually extended to 2031. Long Key, which is St. Pete Beach, was extended to 2030, and Sandkey 2043. They are all on hold for easement issues currently, though. And Treasure Island and Long Key are actually authorized as a combination project for another 50 years as a whole new project that would need new start funds to begin. But all of these projects need to have 100% of the federal easements before we can move forward. Thank you. Quick background, 2012 was the last, this presentation is largely focused on Sandkey for the most part, but because it's really, driving towards the easements at Sandkey, but I will, there will be some stuff about Treasure Island and St. Pete Beach in there too. So in 2012, that was the last time we nourished Sandkey. 2018, as you, I'm sure all remember, we did nourish again, but there were significant gaps in the project due to a lack of easements. Army Corps has not changed its stance on the easements. It has recently decided to allow for the use of 50-year public access easements over the project areas, but that's not really a significant enough change, I think, to put it back out. Most people who are going to see perpetual are going to see 50 years as essentially perpetual. So 2024, we began seeking permits for a county-led project, seeing the writing on the wall, still hoping we can get the Corps involved, but wanting to be prepared to do a county-led project. If we're directed to do so, we began seeking the permits. Those permits have been submitted, those applications have been submitted to the Army Corps and to the state, and we actually expect to probably get them in the next couple months. So things are moving very rapidly. We were informed by the Army Corps that permit may only last 6 months because they're giving it on an emergency basis. So if we choose to use it, it's going to have to happen at a breakneck speed. Of course, WRDA 2024 has also added another part to the puzzle in that, it might allow for the Corps to come back and nourish these beaches on a one-time basis. But they are still figuring out what their guidance is on how to proceed with that, especially with the lack of easements. So we are waiting on Corps guidance on how they are going to implement WRDA 2024, but they were given a 2-year time frame to do it within. So, advance the slide, please. So the easement we're moving with now for Sandkey is different than what the Army Corps' easement was. It still contains a lot of the language we need to be able to nourish the beach, but it does not include public access. And we are giving the residents 2 options right now. We sent out easements that had both us building a beach and a dune, but in the letter we also clearly state that if they don't want a dune, that's fine. we will only build a beach, but they have to request a beach-only easement from us, and then we will send the revised easement to them, and they can sign that one. So they have the choice of whether they want to have dunes on their property or just a beach. And the beach is that horizontal plateau of sand that we're all used to the core building. It's usually an extra 100, 150 feet wide, 5 feet in elevation or so, flat plateau of sand. That's what the Corps' been building for the last 30 years. And so there's that choice. They can have that, or they can also have the dune added. I have noticed that there's a lot of people that are confused about the dune and what the difference between the beach nourishment and the dune. And so those questions come up quite frequently, but we are explaining to people as best we can what the difference is. And that if they don't want a dune, they can just request the beach-only easement. So far, and this was up to date, I updated this yesterday, we still need 93 easements in Indian Rocks Beach, 75 easements in Indian Shores, and 41 easements in Reddington Shores. We still have all the easements in Bel Air Beach and Clearwater and North Reddington Beach. The core easements we got during the last project are fine. So it's still largely Indian Rocks Beach, Indian Shores, and Reddington Shores where we need more easements. Since we began this process mid-December, we've gotten about 20. So we need to do a lot better in order to be able to include this area in the project. This is a cross-section of the beach, kind of showing where the easement area is. So the pink line is where the ECL is. Seaward of that is all state land. We don't need an easement over that. What we need is for that spot that tapers into the seawall on the landward side. And that's because we need to be able to fill the full template to provide the most protection. We need space to be able to run the pipeline down the beach to keep filling additional properties. And right now, we don't have easements over this area in a lot of areas. Most of the beach that's on state land right now is very low lying. I'm sure you go out there and it may look wide, but you've also noticed it's very flat and very close to the water. We need a higher beach that we can work on. And we need to be able to work on those easement areas. So here's a slide to kind of give you an understanding of where we're at currently with the beach. We have had some accretion since 2024 when this photo was taken. So it does look a little better. That storm berm has come back on, but that's that low-lying beach you see when you go out there. Now, for perspective, the photo on the left was pre-project, September 1985, after Hurricane Elaine. And the one on the right is after Hurricane Helene. I didn't make them rhyme on purpose. It just comes out that way. And so we're basically, if you look at the profile, there is more sand in the near shore and under the water than there was then, but that's not what people see. So for all intents and purposes, we're back to pre-project levels. That means there's a whole lot of sand on the landward side we have to put just to even bring the project out to what you guys are used to seeing. For perspective, on the top photo, that's my director, Kelly Hammer-Levy, who is on a stairwell that probably hasn't been exposed since 1998. And this is up by the Dan's Island, which is around R61. Advance the slide, please. So this is what the beach looked like after the last nourishment. So that's a whole lot of sand that's gone. And this is just the beach. Also, all the sea oats on the left in the dune area, that's all gone. We're back to the seawall. And this is a little further. This is actually facing the other direction at Dan's Island, so you can see. Same thing. There's no sand to the north either. Actually looks very similar to Hurricane Elaine. Advance the slide, please. And this is what the beach looked like after the last nourishment in 2018. Advance the slide. So moving a little further south, this is just at the very south end of Bel Air Beach, kind of looking into Bel Air Shore. Very similar to Helene. Advance the slide, please. And this is what that south end of the beach looked like right before you get into Bel Air Shore. This isn't Bel Air Shore, this is just a little bit north, but so this is the tail end of Bel Air Beach. You can kind of see it tapering in off in the distance. That's where Bel Air Shore begins. Advance the slide. Indian Rocks Beach, same thing. There's a little bit more sand out there now, but you can all see it's very dark tan because it's wet. And the rack line is pretty high up on the beach. So it's all very low lying, it's not very protective, and it's not really exposed at high tide. And this is what the beach looked like at that location after the last nourishment. Here's a little further south, Central Avenue by 50 Gulfside and the Happy Fiddler. Same thing. You can see during 85 there was actually a lot of seawall failure. Advance the slide. And this is what it looked like after the last nourishment. Advance the slide. Same thing, facing the opposite direction. You know, the 50 Gulfside condo area, the seawall, it's sort of at the headland of Pinellas County, or the belly, the part that sticks the furthest out in the Gulf and is exposed to a lot of waves. So the beach always erodes the fastest or faster in this area. And that was a big concern during the last nourishment, and we were able to get it filled. And this is what it looked like after. Next slide. And so here's Indian Shores. You know, you can see the rack line's very high up. The beach is very wet. There's not a lot of protection there, especially at high tide or when you have a surge. And you can see on the left there's less sand, so we're doing a little better than 1985, but still not a whole lot. And a lot of that's probably due to the fact that the sand moves from north to south, so they're getting Indian Rocks Beach's sand too. And this is what it looked like after the last nourishment. Advance. And then North Reddington Beach. Not a lot of sand here. It's always another area that's pretty thin. Desperately needs sand. And they've provided all their easements. Advance the slide. And this is what it looked like after the last nourishment. So I wanted to show you on this slide sort of what the beach looks like in areas that aren't maintained. This is Reddington Beach and Bel Air Shore. And both these areas do benefit from the current project we've had. The sand, after Elaine, it was all seawall and Bel Air Shore. They do get sand drifting down from Bel Air Beach, but that depends on Bel Air Beach having sand. The same thing with Reddington Beach. They do get sand, but that also depends on North Reddington Beach and Indian Shores getting sand. It sort of diminishes as it goes south. The further you are away from where the sand's placed, the more likely you're not going to get some on the beach. It might be down in the near shore, you might have a bigger bar, but you're probably not going to have a beach. So I want to let everyone know that we're going to have a project information meeting. That's a webinar to the public on February 13th. We've sent out flyers to all of the properties that need easements. And we're hoping to answer any questions we have there and to help explain what we're planning to do and hope to alleviate fears so that people will sign the easements. Right now, we don't have enough easements to do any of Indian Rocks Beach, Indian Shores, Reddington Shores, North Reddington Beach. We can do Bel Air Beach and Clearwater, but right now we don't have enough easements to do anything south of there. We have 4 or 5 pipeline corridors that come on the beach. That's where you've traditionally seen the pipe come on from the offshore dredges. And those don't connect to where we have a significant amount of easements right now. So we need to fill in the gaps in between and get as many easements as we can, or we're not going to be able to fill this area. It really comes down to, a constructability issue. If we don't have continuous areas, it won't last as long. The sand will erode away and fill in the areas that we didn't fill, and so then that diminishes the areas we did, and it all erodes that much faster. If you need an analogy, you could look at, the west coast of California, how they have those tombolos that stick out. And sometimes you'll see them turn into arches. I'm sure on the cliff faces you've all seen that. And that's because where you have a piece of land that sticks out like a nourishment, the waves refract as they come in and they eat away at both sides until it's gone. So it really needs to be continuous. Putting holes in it isn't going to be effective. And it also doesn't allow us to get our pipeline down the beach. So we need a continuous area and to be able to do the project. And
All right.
you can advance it, but my next slide is just questions. So.
Does anybody have any questions?
I do. Morning, John.
Morning.
Appreciate you being here. Why is it that the Army Corps will only allow the permit to last 6 months?
We're hoping they will change their mind, but I guess the idea is that it's a little bit confusing when you talk to regulatory. They don't have an emergency permit for nourishment, but they're treating it like their normal emergency permits and expediting it. But by doing that, they're also adhering it to the 6-month timeline, which their emergency permits last for. So we're hopeful that we can get that extended because it took 6 months just to construct Sand Key last time. And that was with less sand and less need. So it'll probably be over a 6-month process.
Absolutely.
if we move forward with it.
It's not a practical solution for sure. For the people that have not signed the easements yet, and I'm talking the county's version of the easement, how long does that easement last?
That easement does not expire, and that is because we need to be sure that we can build this project.
So you're asking for the same perpetual easement that the
No.
Army Corps is?
We don't have public access in it. That was a huge concession.
That's what's different.
That's what's different. So they don't have to worry about, we're not making any claim one way or the other about whether the beach is public. It's not removing public access, but it's not granting it either. It's just purely allows us to either build the beach if that's what you want, or build the beach and dune. These projects aren't one-time projects. They've had to happen for the last 6 years, every 6 years. On Sand Key, every 4 years in Treasure Island.
Right.
And if that's not maintained, that beach sand will quickly go away.
Now, what was the purpose of giving them the option of dune or no dune?
A lot of people are extremely anti-dune, and we did not want to, and some people are very pro-dune. And we really didn't want to, because this was a very fast-moving project, we may only have 6 months to construct once they grant us the permit, and that permit could come in as little as 2 months. We wanted to ensure that we could get as many easements as possible.
So in many places where we saw sand, an influx of sand coming in and flooding our streets and destroying our towns, there was a dune in place, but there was also an opening. So that's every access point. It was low. That immediately created problems. The dune started washing in. Everywhere where there was a gap, there was a problem. I'm not 100% convinced that a spotted dune is in our best interest.
Well, I'm not saying we're going to necessarily build the dune that way. If we don't have complete easements, it's going to be too difficult to move forward with building a dune on a piece-by-piece basis.
Right.
Where areas where we can build a long stretch, we'll include it, but if it's a piecemeal, this permit may only last 6 months. We can't have the contractor dialing in and putting, 200-foot dunes here and a 100-foot dune there. It'll be a waste of their time. They need to keep moving.
Right. If you look at, unfortunately, a dune is the correct solution. The dune and beach nourishment, but it has to be continuous. If you look at some of the old Florida areas, they all have dunes.
Yeah.
They have grass growing on them, and they live on through storm after storm. They stay. So I think maybe part of the problem we have is really there's just not been enough education for the community to understand what the benefits of each are. Because definitely the beach nourishment is a Band-Aid, and the dune is a more permanent solution, but it can't have any breaks anywhere. And that's even just for accessibility to get on the beach. It can't be low. If it's open, it's just a duct for sand to come in. And so definitely something that I would like to have more conversations about. That's all I've got.
Oh, you have an answer, it looks like.
I just wanted to add, so last night, the Board of County Commissioners adopted a dune protection ordinance. It's not a countywide authority, but cities can opt in. and we're willing and ready to work with any city that wants to do that. Part of the reason for that is because we have heard from some residents that were hesitant to sign easements, is that they felt like if they could protect that area between a dune, the beach, the dune, and their property, if they felt like if they could protect that better and keep people out of that area, that they'd feel better about it. And so to that end, we talked to the Corps about a year ago about a dune ordinance, and they said so long as the intent of the ordinance was to protect the dune, then it was fine. So now we have a dune ordinance in place that can be utilized, and so residents they still need to go through the state and get, their authorization to put the sign out there, but they can actually place signage out there protecting the dune, no trespassing through the dune, and it has a county ordinance that can be enforced. So it's to give them a little bit more peace of mind that they can protect their dunes and keep people out of them, and it is actually a local law on the books.
That sounds like they're moving in the right direction. That's good. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for John? Nope, Bruce?
Mayor Gaddis, I would just say that, at least in Clearwater, there's a wide variety of opinions on dunes. Some of our residents want them, how quickly we're going to put them back, and there are others who do not want them at all. They like, particularly those that live on the Gulf of America, they like the open area and not having the dune there. So, and then what you shared was accurate. There's a different mix of opinions as to whether or not just here and there, if they cause more harm than good. So definitely, I think that's why you're offering two options is throughout, I'm sure, all the barrier islands, there's a mix of opinion among residents whether or not they're helpful or not.
I'd also just like to add that Sunset Beach, which was probably the most buried of all the beaches in sand, that dune and the beach was fully eroded before the project began. A lot of the sand that buried these communities, yes, the dune was mixed in there because it was part of it, but the beach is also gone, and the near shore sand is also highly eroded in the lower shore face, just below the waves. So, or the upper shore face, sorry. So that's a large volume of sand that was moved up onto the beach. It's not necessarily, I know people like to think 1 + 1 = 2, but these are much more complicated equations than that. Yeah. It's not as simple as the dune is now there. And, there's also the extra benefit that, yes, there was sand on the property, but what did that sand on the property protect? I've seen lots of places where the area behind the seawall was undermined and removed. Parking lots were eroded and collapsed, tiebacks exposed. If it was buried, then that might not have happened. So there could also be a benefit to that. I'm not saying there's always going to be a benefit to the sand having come on shore, but in some cases it may have also provided a benefit.
Yeah. Okay. And my other the question I had was when we talk about 6-month span to do it, we're talking about doing it the traditional way. That's pumping it in from the Gulf. We're not bringing it in by truck loads, which some communities do.
No, we would be pumping it in. It's much more expensive and slower to bring it in by trucks.
Yeah.
Dr. Bishop, what is the due date for the resident easements?
The end of February.
End of
So
February?
March 1st.
Okay. And I understand that the county is emailing a copy of the easement to each of the residents that are required to sign it.
No, we don't have email addresses for everyone. We have mailed it to them.
Mail,
Yeah,
snail
we've
mail.
mailed it
Okay.
to them, and then when it's returned, we find a new address and we remail it to them.
Okay, so snail mail. And I know that Reddington Shores has been working to try to get some of the residents to sign the easements. I think it's a great initiative what the county has done to allow the residents a choice of an easement with a dune or not a dune. I think the most important part of all of this is renourishment. And, this is going to be a very unpopular comment that I'm going to make, but at what time, let me rephrase this, the easements have always been a sticking point in this project. At what point does the county or the state step in and say, our beaches are dire, we need renourishment, and we're going to do this project with or without the easements? At what point does that happen?
We need the easements to do the projects. We can't do it without easements.
So our beaches will just continue to erode without the easements.
In order to work on private property, we need easements. We can't
Okay.
just go on there and do the work.
And we are posting on our website the informational meeting that's coming up that the county is doing. I hope that the messaging is clear to the residents that we will have no beach if these easements are not signed, if the renourishment is not done. And this is our future.
I agree.
Thank you for listening.
John, as Dave alluded to regarding education, one of the situations we ran into when we were talking about dunes, we did the previous dune project, was the height of the dune. There was residents that were concerned that they wouldn't have a view anymore out to the beach. So when you're putting this information out, can we establish the height of the dune so they'll know that it won't be blocking their view?
That needs to be engineered to the standards that the engineers decide, but if they are worried about that, they can always sign the non-dune easement.
Right, but some people, they were in favor of dunes, but the concern was it would be a mountain behind their house and you wouldn't be able to see anything.
Yeah, well, in large part, it looked like a mountain in a lot of areas because there was no beach.
Right.
So when your beach is at 0, a 10-foot dune is 10 foot high. When you have a 10-foot dune and your beach is at 5 feet, now it's only 5 feet high, which isn't nearly as high as it seemed a second ago, so.
Understandable to say that that was the concern that was coming up constantly.
A lot of it's visual, but no, we don't have a lower restriction in there or anything. That comes down to the engineers to decide what's best to protect. But if they are concerned, then they can always just opt in for the beach portion of it.
And I understand the beach, the renourishment is also to protect the infrastructure and to protect Gulf Boulevard.
Yeah.
So as the mayor said, if you don't have these easements, then at what point do you step in to protect that infrastructure?
Well, the beach is sort of, I like to liken the beach to those barrels you see on the highway that are supposed to, cushion your crash if you run into one of the side rails. It's sort of a buffer, right? The beach erodes landward whenever there's a storm, and that creates more space that it has to erode through before it hits that infrastructure. Because once it begins undermining seawalls and cutting through, you can get breaches. There were some people that were worried that the Narrows might breach during this Helene. Portions of Honeymoon Island and Shell Key have breached during past storms, and that's how we've gotten new passes. So those aren't structured. So they're a little easier to breach, but, breaches occur in areas that have roads and infrastructure as well around the state. Just hasn't happened here yet. So it's very possible that the beach could erode through and cut through. The natural process of Barrier Islands is to move landward. All that sand that people experience, that's actually the natural process of what Barrier Islands do. It's sort of like a conveyor. They transport sand from the front to the back. And in doing that, they kind of, like a track, cycle their way landward. And that's how they've migrated on shore to the positions they're at right now. We built condos, roads, and seawalls, which now want to block that flow. So it still wants to move landward. We just need to keep putting sand in front of it to stop it from being able to move as fast.
Thank you.
So in the past instances where we've had beach renourishment, what did we do with easements at that time?
In the past, there was sometimes a 100-foot wide dune along these areas, or there might be areas where, or 80-foot wide. There were places where we were arguing with the Corps because the easement was 60 to 80 feet away from the beach itself. Those dunes are gone. So all that high grassy area that we didn't need to nourish is now gone. And now the beach is lower. So now we have to go landward of where that spot was.
In all those pictures that you had where the erosion was in 84 and currently to the seawall, how did we renourish those areas without an easement?
The initial project was done with temporary easements.
Okay, so is there an opportunity to do it with temporary easement? How come?
No, we're not going to do it with temporary easements. This is a massive investment in the beaches. We need to know what we can build and how to build it, and it needs to build complete. So we need to be able to build complete segments, and we need to have these easements not be temporary so that we can know what to plan for the next project too.
Okay, so is 50 years the minimum you feel comfortable with, or?
50 years is what the Corps
So what's
proposed.
the
Ours are
minimum
not
that you feel comfortable with? And I think the issue that a lot of the residents have is they feel like they're signing away their beach property in perpetuity. And so what is a time frame that you say, look, this is the minimum we could deal with? Is it 5 years, 10 years, 25 years? I mean, what?
Well, we're trying to balance the fact that we're still trying to work with CORE. At some point in time, a decision will, I mean, we are running these parallel tracks, and at some point in time, a decision is going to have to be made as to which track we take. Because if the Army Corps advises us that we're going to issue this emergency permit, and what we've kind of discussed with them is that they would let us, we're ready, they would give us a time to get it out on the street, bid it, and they would align the start date with the notice to proceed so that we didn't lose months in the bidding process. All right, that is running in parallel with these CORE decisions, and we touch base with them weekly. Right now, there's no Assistant Secretary of the Army, and so there's no one to guide and help make that decision, and that's what they're waiting on. There's also the fact that the Congress has allocated emergency funding for this project, and that's sitting out there. But they have, unless something significantly changes, their minimum is 50 years.
Right.
And so that's a barrier. As far as the county easement, this is, for me, as the Public Works Director, this is not different from a drainage project. It's not different from a road project, anything else. If we don't have the property rights, we can't construct it.
Of course.
That would be a taking of property. We're hopeful that after this community meeting that we can allay some of those fears. The other thing is, you know, with a county project, like John mentioned, I mean, these projects are on, I mean, technically the CORE project is supposed to be built every 5 years. On average, it's been closer to 6. If we have to go out and get 400 or 500 easements every single project, it's just going to be a never-ending battle. The difference with a purely county easement is if the county goes away, those easements can be vacated.
Right.
I mean, it's in code, and, you know, those easements can be vacated, and the residents, you know, are not encumbered anymore. But the logistical concept of having to go out and get hundreds of easements across all 3 segments every few years is just, it would be next to impossible. And you get new ownership, and they don't know what the project is, and they don't have the history that we all have. It makes it incredibly difficult. But, you know, at least, you know, with the county, you know, we know that if, you know, in the future, if there is no project, then, and the residents don't want that encumbrance on their property anymore, they can just say, I want this vacated, and we go through the process and we do it. We don't want to have to do it, but we've got to, you know, we've got to protect our beaches, and that means getting ready for a project, and that means we need construction easements like any other project. They own the property. It's their rights. What we're asking from all of our community partners is that you help advocate for this project, and you help try to help move the needle. I mean, you know, Indian Rocks, Indian Shores, and Reddington Shores, you are the linchpin of this project, and we need your support, and we need you to be the biggest cheerleaders to help us get this across the finish line.
So we have, I mean, with the Big C, part of the purpose of us being here is to be able to pull some of our resources to kind of get together, advance some of the shared concerns that we have between all of our cities. And, you know, our vice mayor had a family situation he was dealing with this morning, and so because of this presentation, I felt it was important for me to skip the PSTA meeting to be here today. And one of the things I was going to ask all of you today was, I know Mayor John Doctor had a good traction with the letter he sent out to the president this past week. And so I'm asking, would it be beneficial? And one of the things I was going to ask the Big C this morning is there a way for us to pool our resources, right? It seems that the president is saying the right things, that he wants to eliminate, you know, bureaucratic hindrances to moving some of these projects that are detrimental, you know, to the health of our communities. Is there something that we can do? Write a letter together, ask the president, please appoint somebody immediately, and let's remove, would that be helpful? Is there anything on the administrative side that could remove some of these roadblocks from the federal side? Is that something that we can do, where we can at the very least, get together and say, look, this is a dire need. I mean, not just for our community. In fact, we could take it further. And we've done this before. We did it with the short-term ordinances. You know, Mayor Will, I mean, you had amazing success with that. We've shut it down, you know, the last 3 years in a row. And I mean, we've had good success by pulling all of our resources together.
Commissioner Peters is actually drafting a letter to exactly what you just mentioned. It was discussed yesterday at the county commission meeting, and they all agreed that she would draft that letter on behalf of the county commission, and I'd be happy to make sure that her office sends a copy of that over. That could be, you guys could, maybe you take some of those points and incorporate them in. But yes, and, your advocacy and helping to, get past some of these hurdles would be very well.
No, I mean,
thank you.
but I'd be personally happy to sign on to it, send it to our governors, send it to our senators, send it to our, representative of the House of Representatives. I mean, whatever it takes. I mean, at this point, our town isn't as effective. We've only got 3 easements that we're dealing with, and God help us all, we'll never get them. But, some of your towns, I mean, Treasure Island, the rest of them, I mean, it's beyond dire. Dire was 3 years ago.
Yeah, on Treasure Island, we're finalizing that erosion control line on Sunset, and we'll have some city easements that we need to work with them on, but we do need private easements from property owners on Sunshine. And so, yes, we're going to be asking the city for their help, because you know your community better than we do.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I'd just like to clarify real quick, if I can, too. The 50-year easement that the Corps is allowing is really a concession because they authorize some projects with 50-year easements, and since our projects are pre-existing, they were going to allow it for those 3 existing projects I showed up there. The Sand Key expires in 2043, and Treasure Island 2031, and Long Key in 2030. And basically, even though it's a 50-year easement, it's only good for those projects then. All new projects, the newly authorized project I mentioned for Treasure Island and Long Key, those would all still require perpetual public access easements. This is purely because those projects were authorized back in the day.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on what you just shared, because I guess it was Monday, I did State of the Bay with Mayor Castro and Mayor Welch in St. Petersburg. And a lot of what we've been working on together, our 3 mayors and our 3 cities, has been trying to address these federal issues like you're talking about as a region. I was in Washington last week, met with all senators, all kinds of folks. They don't view Clearwater Beach or our individual municipalities. They view us as a region. And I think we're wasting our time for me to write my own letter or for you to write your own letter. We have to act and have to request things, write the White House, and it even includes the county. The county needs to be on board with us too, to request things as a region. We all have the same issues with FEMA, but we're not going to be very effective if we're each writing our own individual letters. What you said, I think, is really important, that if there are things we can all agree on that we all need, then we're much more effective when we're now including more than one congressional delegate. Now more in Tallahassee even, we've got Representative Jacques, we've got Representative Cheney, we've got Representative Burfield, all on the same page, helping us advocate for what we want. I'd like to see us, particularly on beach renourishment and these other issues, be more organized as a barrier island community to request these things, because we will get lost in the shuffle if it's just one off from the county wrote a letter and you write a letter. And unless we do it all together, I just think, and that's what we're learning, Tampa, St. Petersburg, and Clearwater, on transportation issues. We've got to work as a region to make requests and get things done, or else we'll get lost in a big Washington, D.C. bureaucracy and not get anything done at all.
And we can take that one step further with the Florida League of Cities, because this is not just a Pinellas, Pasco, Sarasota issue. This is an issue on the East Coast just as much as is here. And so, again, if we can pull our resources and then, I'm not sure who do we reach out at the FLC to see if there's some momentum we can gather, getting all the beach towns together, and even the non-beach towns to advocate for us and say, look, this is a natural resource that Florida has and affects every county in Florida, whether you're in Alachua or whether you're in Pinellas.
And we have a new administration that's hungry to solve problems, make changes. I think timing is very important. We can't dawdle. Whatever it is, we need to form a plan and present it the correct way, because right now we've got, like I said, a new administration, and they like solving problems and simplifying things, coming up with simple solutions and acting quickly. So I think both mayors are correct that we need to take a stand and join with the county and see if we can get some national attention for sure. I think now is the time. Any other questions or comments for John?
I have a comment, not necessarily for John, but to piggyback on what you're saying, we won't meet again here as the Big C until February. And I don't think that waiting until February to write a letter or to make a decision is appropriate. I think there are several things that are going on in our communities that need to be addressed immediately. And we need to decide today how we're going to go about that. How are we going to write this letter and do it in conjunction with the county, our legislative officials, and how are we going to address FEMA? Because that's going to come up in discussions, and write that letter that is signed off by all of us. The purpose of the Big C is for all of us as barrier island communities to unite together. And I think that, and this was said, I'm just reiterating, when one city writes a letter, okay, it's not really a voice. But when we collectively come together and we all agree and write a letter, our voice is much stronger. And to take the next step and include our elected officials from the commission level to the state level to the federal level, that makes our voice even louder. And we definitely have a lot right now that not just the mayors are dealing with, but our community and our residents are dealing with. And expedience in acting on this, I think, is very important.
It's sad whenever you've got two of the most powerful agencies in the federal government and they're both working against you.
100%.
All right. Any other comments, questions? No? All right. John, I appreciate you being here, and thank you for being so patient.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right. I'm not sure if he's here or not. Clint Herbeck, Chief Operating Officer, Pinellas County Schools, was supposed to be presenting on the flood damaged schools. He is not here, so we will move right on to Gina Harvey, Transportation Planning Section Manager, Pinellas County Public Works.
Good morning. I'm not Gina Harvey.
Obviously.
Gina's in the back. She told me I was doing this presentation this morning, so. Good morning. My name is Tom Washburn. I'm the Transportation Division Director for Pinellas County Public Works. I just want to give you a brief presentation on a project that we're working on that affects the traffic signals primarily along Gulf Boulevard within most of your communities as a result of the storms that we had last year. So, and it's elevating the traffic signal controller cabinets. So next slide, please. So as a result, primarily from Helene with the storm surge that we all experienced, most of the traffic signals along the coast were inundated with salt water. The surge flooded the controller cabinets to an extent that we have never seen before. So we lost 35 total cabinets. There's some photos there to show, what happens. I mean, electronics and water don't usually mix, but it's even worse when you mix in the salt water. So it just destroys the equipment that we have inside. So these were complete rebuilds. Usually when we lose power at a traffic signal, we've got a pretty good plan for restoring that. We have UPS, uninterruptible power service that will maintain the signals for a period of time. We also are able to deploy generators and inverters to keep the signals running while we wait for power to be restored. But when something like this happens, these were total destruction. required total replacement. And so for that period of time, the signals are down as we're rebuilding the equipment. We were scrambling, trying, with 35 cabinets, we don't keep that much in stock, so we were scrambling, trying to get the equipment from others across the state. We were successful. It took us about a week and a half after Helene to get the signals repaired, just in time for Milton to come our way again. So there was a chance there, if we were to experience that same amount of surge, that we would be looking at the same amount of repair work. Fortunately, that did not happen. But again, when this happens, we've got law enforcement that could be used doing other things, having to control the intersections for us as we're rebuilding the intersections. It gets costly. Each of these cabinets, depending on the amount of equipment that's in there, costs anywhere from $35,000 to $50,000 per location. And so again, you can see with the pictures the amount of equipment we have in there. So it's a pretty big hit that we took. So next slide, please. So what we've been doing with some of the research since the storms is to come up with a project to look at ways to elevate our cabinets. Typically, when you look at a standard installation, those foundations are anywhere from 6 inches to a foot high. So for most flood events, we're safe. But we're looking at elevating them to an extent where if we get, storm surges in the future, that, we don't suffer the same type of damage that we did. So we've been doing quite a bit of research to determine, how high that should be, what our alternatives are. And so, we're still working through those details, but we're at a point here where we want to present this information to you and let you know what we're doing, getting prepared for the next storm season and then the storm seasons moving forward. Next slide, please. So these are some of the options that we've come across during our research. Some of the photos there, we've got one location up in Tarpon Springs where we do have the foundation elevated a little bit with steps. Research that we found, the state of Mississippi did quite a bit along their Gulf Coast after some of their storms. And so you've got an example there in the middle of, a better looking structure. It's a concrete structure with the railings on it, and the cabinets sit up nice and high. But it's a safe work environment for the technicians with the railings. And then we've also looked at options with the metal railings as well. Next slide, please. And so there's a couple different options that we're looking at. We've looked at the option to, again, elevate them on foundations. We've looked at options for mounting them on the poles where we can get them up a little bit higher. What we found out is it's really a function of the type of equipment and how much equipment we have in the signals. So we do have, some major intersections that have a lot more equipment in there. The intersections that come off of the bridge access out to the barrier islands and out to Gulf Boulevard, those are all pretty major intersections. They have a lot of our ATMS, ITS equipment. So those are much bigger cabinets. They're too heavy to be mounted on poles. So those are locations where we'd be looking at some sort of a foundation option for mounting. But some of the smaller intersections, we have been working with our vendor, which is Econolite, and they've come up with some options where they can scale down the size of the cabinet so that it could possibly be mounted on some of the poles that we already have out there. Next slide, please. And so again, locations that we're looking at, we've got the 35 locations that we've identified, that we know were damaged. What we actually do at a particular location depends on the right-of-way that we have. It depends on the type of equipment that we have. And then that last bullet there, certainly open to discussion on beautification ideas. Several of the controller cabinets in the area are wrapped. Gina and John are here with me today. They have a program with graffiti abatement that they've been monitoring through Creative Pinellas for several years. So, we've actually had murals painted on some of our concrete structures. We've had some of the Pinellas Trail overpasses painted with murals. We've wrapped the controller cabinet. So we do think there's an option if there are locations where we've got those concrete large structures, that there may be some options to beautify those and make them a little more attractive than just having a concrete structure on Gulf Boulevard. Next slide, please. This is just a list of the locations, again, primarily along Gulf Boulevard, but then some of the inland locations as well. I know that's hard to see, but we'll make a copy of this presentation available. But those are the 35 locations that we would focus on. Storm losses, just with the two storms for us totaled $2.2 million. We've got a grant in for the $3.5 million. Next slide, please. And so finally, our next steps. We've applied for the local mitigation strategy grant. Those applications were due just a couple of weeks ago, so we did add this project onto the priority list. The committee goes through a rating process, so we expect that this will rate pretty high. We've had other projects in the past where we've converted several of our span wire intersections to mast arms as hardening projects, and so I know we've had some conversations with some of your staff in some of the beach communities just to get a sense of level of support for this project. FEMA goes through a selection process, so we're still several months away from getting any sort of feedback on this. But at this point, we wanted to present this to you. Hopefully, we would love to have a letter of support from the Big C to move forward that we can include in our application, but again, we are moving forward with the application. And at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
So I think our team told me that we regretted after Helene that we didn't pull them, that evidently you can pull them out. It's not like a huge task to physically remove the signal boxes. I mean, it's going to take some time and resource to do it. Unfortunately, we got enough employees. We're capable of doing that. But is that an option with what you're talking about here? Or how hard is that to do?
We did the same thing after Helene. Like I said, we spent, that first week and a half getting them repaired. We did pull some of that new equipment out. So we can't pull everything out, but the critical components, the controller, some of the more technical ITS equipment, we did pull that out. It's just a matter of how much time you have and how much work that it takes.
I guess the other thing that the residents might be sensitive to throughout all of our Barry Island communities is just the appearance, like the structure you showed us in Tarpon, where it's not as, it's noticeable when you raise them up like that and you add all that, and there might be some resident sensitivity to the appearance of it.
Yeah, we understand that. That's why we wanted to come here today, let you know that we've got this, and if we start moving forward with this, we certainly want to have those discussions and see what's going to be acceptable to each of the beach communities.
I'll certainly say it's uglier to have no signal than it is to have a box out there. I'm curious, just for my own information, whenever the storms hit, was the timing of once the equipment was restored, was the timing altered? It seems like all of our signals operate less efficient than they did prior to the storms.
Yep, you're absolutely correct. So our focus, especially after Milton with the amount of damage that we had, is getting the signals operating red, yellow, green, and putting whatever timings we have in there that we can, but certainly they're not coordinated. The detection part of that becomes critical, making sure that we've got good vehicle detection to make sure that we can keep coordination going, but those were something that we were playing catch-up on afterwards.
Now, I'm used to, we could call a number and make suggestions. If we saw something that was super inefficient, there were massive backups of traffic, you see obvious defects in the programming. Are you guys still doing that?
Of course.
Okay, all right. And do you know that number by heart?
I don't. Kelly, Gina, 464-8900, 464-8900.
8,900. All right, great. All right, any other questions or comments for Tom? All right, well, I appreciate you being here, and I'm sure that you won't have any problems working with our communities. Thank you for coming.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, now we are on to unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business that anyone would like to bring up? Mayor Queen, you've been very quiet today.
Very quiet.
It's not like you. It's, you okay?
Got one more meeting left and I'm out of here.
Okay, all right.
20 years.
The mayor has spoken. All right, now we're on to discussion items. Does anyone have, yes, sir?
Along the same lines as the letter to the Army Corps of Engineers, I saw Mayor Treasure Island's letter. My family sent me a screenshot from, they live on the East Coast in Hollywood, Florida. And so we are getting traction, and again, I think we should consider pulling our resources, writing a letter as the Big C, sending that to the president's office, sending it to Rick Scott's office, sending it to Anna Polina's office, sending it to our state representative's office, and saying we need to get bureaucratic relief. I can tell you in our city, based on the numbers that we have last night, we're about 75-80% through with permits. Almost all the permits for damaged homes are in. It's going to help us a little bit, not much, but I know so many other cities who are still struggling with getting residents back into their homes, getting permits filled, and so much of it is just held up by the requirements that are strangling us, keeping us from letting residents back into their homes and being able to, streamline the permitting process. So I think, again, until proven otherwise, I'm going to take the president at his word when he says that he wants to offer relief. And so I think we should put him to the test and say, this is what you said publicly, and I think this is what we then now expect to see from our president as well. Help us get through this process. He made a big talk about the Carolinas and about California, and we're in Florida. We were affected as much as anyone else, if not more in many cases. And I think so my request to the Big C would be that we put something together as a group. I think the mayor alluded to it as well. There should be strength in numbers here.
I believe that us pooling together, I see no reason at all why we couldn't get the president here and actually have a face-to-face with him. I actually see that being possible.
Yep.
So definitely something we want to work on. What does the Big C think about maybe, let's follow up with this meeting within the week. Maybe we do a conference, a web conference or something, and we kind of brainstorm on what our plan of attack is and how we want to approach this. Is anyone open to that?
I am open. I think that we need to, my opinion would be, FEMA started with good intentions. And I can tell you that from Madeira, when Helene hit and our staff went to work, we hire professionals who should be able to hit the ground running without fear of retribution from a federal agency that's going to come in 2, 3, 4 years and punish the citizens. I want the letter to tell them that the FEMA should not come in and say, your state rules aren't enough. And they should be able to oversight what the professionals who work in our cities do. If when we started on the ground after Helene had been able to continue doing what our city staff was doing here, our homeowners would all have permits. There wouldn't be any more SD letters. We wouldn't be waiting on ACV appraisals. We wouldn't be waiting on remodel permits to be approved. They'd all be done. We took 2 steps forward and got told we had to take 20 steps back. And we all know Tidal Basin has failed everyone. The Tidal Basin is not FEMA's responsibility, right? But the whole notion that we have a federal government stepping into our barrier islands where they know nothing about how we live or what it's like to be here, and they're telling the professionals in our municipalities that they can't do their jobs, I think is just terrible. And it doesn't serve any resident anywhere. And I do think that if I was going to have an opinion on President Trump and on the oversight of Florida, I would tell you that my opinion would be we deal with hurricanes all the time And people forget about us because they think we know what, we do it. It's like living out in the Midwest and getting hurricanes. And the Carolinas don't get hurricanes. So for them, the devastation is a different type of devastation than what we're dealing with. But without coming together and doing something to push us to the forefront, we're going to stay forgotten. So next week, get together on a call or do Zoom. I'm 100% for it. I think that we sit here as mayors. There's a great value of input that comes from our community development departments. The engineers, they understand what we're going through. They're the people who are writing the letters, having them have input. I know that I rely heavily on our community development department to understand and keep up with what's going on in the process. So having one included as well, or maybe emailing some information to get that to kind of start a letter going would be my thoughts.
Okay, great. You're in luck, actually. My city clerk is here. She's probably rolling her eyes right now going, what's he going to make me do next? But I think Renee would be very helpful in putting that together. And then we'll have the call and we'll brainstorm. We'll try to come up with a good plan. And then we'll see what happens.
If I might too, I think it's important that we be very clear on what we want. And we also be reasonable in our expectations. I can tell you I've worked in cities and towns with two other communities with prior disasters, one wildfires in Tennessee and then the Panhandle and Panama City Beach after Hurricane Michael, which was completely devastating. And the experience we've had with FEMA here, with Helene and Milton, identical to the experiences that those communities had. They are great day of, and then as time goes on, they become less and less effective, harder to deal with, and all these struggles are similar to struggles that communities throughout the country have with them. So I think for us, we need to kind of talk about for all of our communities, what is it that we really need immediately some help with? I know the president talked the other day in North Carolina about some things he was going to do immediately for that area. And I think that's where we really need to focus and kind of talk and crystallize what is it specifically that we really want help with right now. Because some of the challenges, and we've all dealt with, there are challenges that are long-term fixes for FEMA. And I think for us right now, with the situation we're all still in, even Clearwater, we made a lot of progress, but we still have a lot of need too. We need to really be crystal clear on what it is we want done immediately.
I agree.
So maybe if we could come prepared to the meeting, go back to our city staff, discuss that immediate need that would affect change most quickly in our communities, and that could be where we start the conversation on our call, is everyone come prepared with your immediate need, see where we're all in line together, and I'm certain we will be.
Good deal.
I'd like to address the letter. I wrote a letter on Saturday after watching on Friday night what President Trump had done in both North Carolina and in California. And I'll tell you, he was surprised. You could actually tell he was surprised how FEMA had reacted, especially in California, and then it also went back to North Carolina. And the one thing that I do know about Trump after watching him for years and years and years is he's a person that attacks and moves on. And to wait 3, 4, 5 weeks or whatever it's going to be isn't acceptable to President Trump. Government moves very slow, and that's a problem. And I think that Trump basically has said he's going to do what he needed to do in those two places, and he's moving on. And he is truly moving on. So what I did was to send a letter, and it's out there for people to see, that basically said we would like to see the action taken in all of our coastal communities that he had taken in both California and in North Carolina. And that basically said, he said, we don't need FEMA to get in the way. We don't need FEMA to tell people that they've got to fill out all the paperwork. And he also said, especially in California, we can do this and get it done tomorrow. And that is his mindset. And that's the mindset we have to have too. It's not that we can sit around for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks until we meet again or pass it around, because he's already moved on past that point if we wait 3, 4, 5 weeks or even a couple of weeks. And that's the reason that I did this. And I think that it was a very well-written letter. It addressed all of the concerns that all of these communities have. We're basically all in the same boat. And we're just asking, not that he's forgetting us, because he's not forgotten us, I can tell you that. But, and as I wrote in the letter, I respectfully ask that you extend the help clearing the FEMA bureaucracy to us in the state of Florida. We need the same help with permits and regulations that North Carolina and California need. We also need the same financial resources. Our residents have been willing and able for months now to do the necessary repairs that they need to return to their homes and restart their lives. FEMA regulations and bureaucracy stand in our way. And that is basically what he cleared in California and North Carolina, was the bureaucracy and all of the regulations. And that's all I've asked him to do as a mayor, and basically addressing that all of the coastal communities are in the same boat, and that we would like to have him do the same thing for us. So I think that it was a good idea. I stand behind, basically taking it. I basically said the other night is that if there are 50 letters that would go to the president, that would even be better. But I didn't have the opportunity to get to 50 people, but I did have what my thoughts were, and that's what I did and put out there.
So let's take that letter and make it from the Big C right now.
It definitely couldn't hurt.
Yeah, we don't have to wait. Let's do it.
Yeah, the thing that's really interesting is that no matter how quickly we respond to FEMA on all the requirements they have, and even the help that we can get in our offices to help process that paper, it still takes years, not months, not weeks. It takes years to get some of this money for the towns and for the citizens. And you wonder, are they really aware, is the president aware of how long it takes from the time that you have everything complete on our end till money comes into the city, money comes into the residents?
I'd be more concerned about getting people back in their homes rather than getting the money back. So let's get people back in their homes.
Well, that's, of course, part and parcel of it.
That's first.
Yeah. Well, if they don't have insurance, they need to rely on FEMA to get back in their homes, and that's the issue.
The turmoil that we're having is people are not back in their homes, and I understand it. And they're mad, and they're mad at me, they're mad at everybody, and we need to help them, and that's the way to do it.
It's been 4 months. I mean, we couldn't move any slower, but everybody is afraid of FEMA. And that is one of the issues. 3 weeks ago, FEMA came down to Treasure Island, and they basically looked at everything that we had been doing, said, well, you're doing a pretty good job. But they gave us kind of 4 conditions. And the 4 conditions are threats, basically. I mean, the 4 conditions basically say what we can and can't do and what they can do if we don't do it this way and that way. And that's what's been keeping everybody out of their homes for the last 4 months. And I would be mad too. I mean, just everybody, anybody in the world would be mad if you can't get permits, and it's now been 4 months plus. And that's basically all I'm saying in the letter. And he's already opened the door when he went to North Carolina and to California. So you strike when the iron is hot.
Mayor Queen, if that is a motion, I'm happy to second it.
Absolutely, that's a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
I have no idea what your letter says. I mean, look, I understand the resources available to other communities. We have not had a problem with permitting in Clearwater at all. We've got folks been on our staff for 30 years who have worked through the process, and And we have to also remember that it's not just FEMA, it's the Florida Building Code that folks have to comply with. And in Clearwater, a lot of what we're asking people to do to get the permits has nothing to do with FEMA, it has to do with complying with the Florida Building Code. So again, I think we are definitely more effective if we speak with one voice. But I would just like to see the letter first before we vote to just sign on to it, to see what it says, just to make sure that it represents what each of our community residents are feeling or the experiences we're having.
And if it's okay, then what I would like to do is you send us all a copy of the letter, and then we'll review it, and Renee will put our Zoom meeting together, and we'll have a final discussion about it and decide if that works into our strategy, and then we'll plan our attack. The main thing is that right now we have two agencies that seem to be working against us. No matter what we do, it seems that they are completely against the beach communities. And the Army Corps and FEMA, they're supposed to be our allies, not our adversaries. So we're gonna get this message out, and we'll see what happens. Do we have any other discussion on this particular topic, or do we have any new discussion items that anyone else would like to bring up? All right, seeing as we have none, let's move on to legislative update. Do we have anyone here that would like to present a legislative update? Okay, smart move, I guess, considering. All right, so let's move on to city events. We will start down with start on this end with Mayor Petraeus.
I came unprepared. Come back to me in 30 seconds.
You didn't look at your cell phone.
I did not, but I'm
Okay.
about to.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that we are beginning to get back to normal, some normalcy. We are now beginning in March, we're going to start doing things in our parks, and that'll be the first. I think that we have seen in the last few months, 4 months, almost all of our major events canceled. We had our standing ovations, we've had some tennis tournaments, and you know, our beaches and our parks weren't in great shape. They're back almost to a normal. So I'm just waiting now to see how many of the folks are going to come back to the beaches. We did have one event that's going to be a corporate fest that's going to be in March. And that is where all the corporations in the county come together, and they have challenges, and they have tug-of-wars, and they have a lot of things. And the kite festivals are coming back as well. We're starting to sign them up. And so we don't have an accurate list yet and an exact date that we're going to open, but we're hoping that by March 1st, everything will be taken care of. So if you have any ideas, if you have any of these promotions or anything that you'd like to see happen in the city, please let us know.
Madeira Beach has our monthly trash cleanup on Saturday with the Trash Pirates. It will meet at Saltwater Hippie, and we meet down at Johns Pass. So anyone that wants to come out and pick up trash, I think this Saturday they're going to focus on Archibald, will be one of the locations. And the library is scheduled to open February 10th, and I'm sure everyone is excited about that. That was one of the biggest things to lose in the storm for many, many residents. For all the people who say we shouldn't have a library, and there are people who say we shouldn't have a library, I cannot tell you the number of people who reached out because they miss having a place to go and sit and read a book. So I think that's pretty exciting news, all things considered that are going on in the world.
Nothing further, just the library, February 10th.
Okay. Mayor Queen.
Still battling tidal basin. Other than that, nothing else going on.
In our march towards getting back to normal, we're going to have our traditional St. Patrick's Day Festival on March 15th. So everybody stop by and see us. We'll have vendors and music and Irish dancers, and very happy to be able to do something like this for our community.
Great.
Well, in Indian Rocks Beach, we're hosting Winterfest on the Rocks again, February 15th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We're going to be painting kids' faces while we drink beer and wine. We're going to have live music. We're going to have a pet contest. How exciting. There'll be games and a silent auction. So see you there.
Go right ahead.
Well, it's almost baseball season, believe it or not. So going to be out at Baker Ballpark on, I guess, a week from tomorrow, or a week from Friday, to welcome the Phillies equipment truck for spring training. And so we're excited. We had a lot of damage at Baker Ballpark. We had a good 2 to 3 feet into the locker rooms underneath the stadium, and so we've had to do major recovery renovation work out there to get it ready for spring training, but we jumped on it and guaranteed the Phillies we'd be ready for spring training, and we are. So I would even told the Rays yesterday, I'd be glad, day before yesterday, be glad to get it ready for a regular Rays season too, if they decide they need a place to play in 2026, but we'll see where that goes. But we're excited about spring training just because spring break for all of us is just so important to our communities to welcome. And so we're fortunate that, you know, we've built up, we've in the last 15 years built a lot of hotels, new hotels are more resilient. And we were able to get back quicker with at least our tourism industry to welcome folks back. And so we want to help all of us recover by making sure that all those baseball fans that have come here for years, maybe stayed in Treasure Island, stayed all up and down our barrier islands to attend spring training, we want to make sure that they come back. Whether they can stay in Treasure Island or anywhere this year, we just want to make sure they don't go somewhere else for spring training. We want to make sure they come back to Pinellas County and have a good experience. And then when that place they have historically stayed down the barrier islands is ready a year from now, it's just routine. They go ahead and rebook there. So we really want to help all of our communities by welcoming back folks this year for spring training, keeping them in the routine of visiting Pinellas County for spring break and spring training so that they don't have an experience in the Panhandle or somewhere else this year, and then they decide, well, this is nice too, and then they don't come back. So we feel like that's a big role, and so we're more excited about spring training this year than ever. And so the other thing we're also doing is we've been giving more and more musical acts at the Sound Amphitheater in Clearwater. They've just released a more robust schedule with a diverse kinds of music. We've even got, it's not really things I have on my radio in my car, but this electronic EDM music that's very attractive to young people. We have 3 of those concerts coming up here soon, and we're trying to get more than just the old school, the Styx, the Beach Boys, you know, the music that a lot of is my generation. We're trying to get a diverse range of music. And again, bringing people back to Pinellas County to have that same experience they've already had so that they will not go somewhere else short term and then not come back. And when all of our beaches are running up and again, full again, they'll continue to go to all those places that they've enjoyed for years up and down our coast. So we think that the next couple months going to be a great time, not just for Clearwater, but for the entire county, and are really looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mayor Rector. All right, let's give St. Pete Beach a second crack at it.
First, I would like to say how much of an avid connoisseur of EDM I am. And so I'm really looking forward to participating in at least 1 or 2 of those 3 events you have coming up in Clearwater Beach. And you all think I'm kidding. You know, I was actually really excited to see when I came in this morning that the Wednesday market was back up and running. So I looked at our events calendar, and then we do have our Sunday market on Corey Avenue that's running every Sunday, starting at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that is available. And that is all that we have in our social calendar for right now. We're still in the process of rebuilding our community center. That was a near total loss. So we're working getting that back up. But for the time being, we hope to see you there on Sundays.
Okay, great.
Mr.
And,
President, could I please make one introduction this morning?
Sure, go right ahead.
So in Treasure Island, this is the first year that we actually have a position for an economic development director. And she is sitting right here, Joan Goodrich. And we welcome Joan. She's got a lot of experience, and hopefully she's going to put our business community back together again.
Great.
Thank you.
great. And welcome. In Bel Air Beach, we're very close to normal again. We're having, Saturday morning, we're having our monthly beach cleanup. Also, we realized just recently that this March, Bel Air Beach turns 75. So look for some banners and maybe some events we'll be having this year. We're going to try to celebrate this 75th anniversary all year long. Anyway, looking forward to that. And that's all I have for city events in Bel Air Beach. I'm open to a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, everyone. Thanks for coming.